afternoon. We are here at the McCoy Rec Center and we have the Prepare NB event. This is our first annual Prepare NB. My name is Kim Lundgren. I'm one of the consultants working with the city, part of Kim Lundgren Associates, KLA. What we're really excited about here today is that we were able to bring a number of vendors together that are representing resources for the community here in New Bedford related to preparedness. That includes everyone from the police to fire to community services. We have the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency here as well supporting this, and a lot of this is driven to get comments on the city's hazard mitigation plan. So we wanted to bring folks together in a really fun and exciting way. We know that not everybody wants to just hear a presentation about hazards. This way we brought some fun things to the table. We've got the bouncy house, we've got activities and funds for the kids, a scavenger hunt and raffle tickets for prizes like the zoo and the Whaling Museum, to allow the parents to have time to provide the city comments on things related to hazards that they're experiencing and concerns, what they'd like to see the city do to maintain the sustainability and resilience of it into the future.
I'm Michelle Paul, the Director of Resilience and Environmental Stewardship. I've worked with emergency management on putting this plan together, but really to work with them to get the community together to provide input on the plan. The city departments know a lot of information about the city, but we really need the community to provide those day-to-day, the everyday hazards and everyday events that everybody goes through. So we are really glad that we've got such a great turnout today, and we really hope that we get a lot of good feedback on the NB preparedness plan, the All Hazard Mitigation Plan, and then we will submit that to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, so that we can adopt that and put that to work and do the projects that really help us be the most resilient city we can be.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Noriga, Director of Emergency Management for the City of New Bedford. Part of this plan is the public comment period for our updated All Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's a plan that we look at every 5 years. COVID kind of delayed that a little bit. That identifies all the hazards, man-made, disaster, cyber, it takes all the hazards, and we identify projects that we could get federal funding for. We put that all in a plan. We sat down with DPI, DFFM, police, fire, parks, every department in the whole entire city. We also sat down with some of our community partners like CEDC, the Immigration Assistance Center, Greater New Bedford Community Health, St. Luke's, and we have a bunch of projects that we're looking for people to have comment on it. They're basically projects like, this place always floods. Well, does it flood in a 1-inch storm, a 3-inch storm, a half-inch storm? So we're trying to find projects that we want, that we need to mitigate. And that public comment periods open up for another week, but you can always reach out to the Emergency Management Department if you have any issues with the plan or comments. But ideally, this plan is a 5-year plan that gets updated, gets submitted to FEMA, they approve it, and then it opens up the city for federal mitigation money after a disaster. This plan is not required. It's something that the city is doing to get additional funding to mitigate the flooding on Belleville Avenue, Paynerum Avenue. But it's also not disasters. It's cyber, like I said, and a whole multitude of different hazards. I'm really excited. This is a plan that was done originally in 2016, so we've really taken a lot of time on this. We hired an outside consultant, and I think we have a great plan that will put New Bedford back in its same place that it is, or better, when it comes to recovery and disasters. Once again, if you have any questions on the plan, reach out to the Department of Emergency Management, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Shannon. I'm one of the educator naturalists at the Lloyd Center for the Environment. We are a nonprofit located in South Dartmouth. Today we brought our coastal watershed model with us. We bring this to local community schools to teach children about pollution. So what this is a mock community, and we actually use colored drink mixes to identify sources of pollution within our community. We sprinkle them on the different spots. We actually have the children identify spots they could think would be a problem. So for instance, we have an oil truck on a bridge. Its hose is not connected, so this would be a source of pollution. We could go up to a farm. Unfortunately, if you had a huge herd of cows that were not managed correctly, you could have issues with their manure. If we went to our golf course, fertilizers could be a problem. If we get back to the 1960s in New Bedford, we pretend we're a factory on the Acushnet River. They just used to dump things into our oceans. A construction site, we don't know what could be under there. There could be a lot of horrible things under there. So we basically go around the community and have the children identify these sources of pollution. Then I come along with my rainstorm. So now, by raining in our community, these children can see how these point sources of pollution will affect a community. So even if you are up at a hill at Walmart in North Dartmouth, the children can actually visualize how this pollution would get down to our waterfronts. By involving them and using scented drink mix, it actually entertains the children a lot and really gets them to understand how little tiny things in our community do not disappear. Just because we can't see pollution or where it's gone in a rainstorm does not make it disappear. So we really like to use this to show children that things can never be destroyed. We do this at all different schools, we can do it for adults, but it's a really great visual way for people to understand what pollution can do in a watershed for our coastal communities.
So we're really glad to see a lot of people here, and if you haven't been able to come down here today, you can comment on the plan. It is available online on the city's website. It's available on the NB Resilient dashboard, and is also available on the emergency management website. And there is a link when you find the plan online. There is a link at the bottom to provide comments. And if for some reason you cannot find that, please call me, Michelle Paul, at City Hall at 508-979-1487, and I will put you in the right direction. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi. How are you? Good. I'm good. So this is going to be informal. If while I'm speaking and you have a question about what I'm speaking about, just raise your hand or call out and say, can you explain that? And if I can, I will. If I can't, I'll take your name down and I'll figure it out later and get back to you, okay? So like Kim mentioned, this is our process. We've been working on this for 2 years. We're updating the 2016 Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it's going from a natural hazard, so like winter hazards, snow, blizzards, flooding, and we expanded this, so now it also considers human-caused and technological hazards, so cybersecurity, terrorism, communications and infrastructure, things like that. So it's an expanded hazard mitigation plan. And we're in the middle of our public comment period right now. So if you go to the city's dashboard, the website, the plan is available there and you can make comments right there. My information's right there as well. So welcome everybody, thank you for coming. So our agenda, I'm just going to speak about our various planning teams, our outreach and engagement efforts, the hazard mitigation process, and then our next steps. So we had multiple different planning teams. We have a core team, municipal officials there with the day-to-day folks. We have a local hazard mitigation committee. That's pretty much all of the people who represent the municipal departments here in the city of New Bedford. We had a technical committee We had an equity partnership, and this plan update has a very specific equity lens that we're looking through to make sure that we reach a whole range of demographics. And then we also had the consultant team, myself, Horsley Witten Group, my colleagues, as well as Kim Lundgren Associates. This is the local hazard mitigation committee that I mentioned. People who are in the bold font were also folks who served on the core team as well. And this presentation will be posted on the city's website also. So City of New Bedford, again, we had folks from MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and then these are the folks who are on our equity partnership. A lot of the folks that are upstairs at the tabling sessions, they participated as part of our equity group as well. Again, consultants, Kim Lundgren Associates, and then Horsley Witten Group where I work. And this is just the beginning of our list of the equity partners for outreach and engagement. We wanted to make sure that we reached a range of demographics, not just the people who usually come to planning meetings, but people who are typically underrepresented. Again, this is just more additional folks from the equity partners. Project components, so today we're here for the multi-hazard mitigation plan. We also updated the city's comprehensive emergency management plan at the same time, so that plan will be coming out shortly as well. What's new for this plan? We're looking at climate change being factored into this hazard mitigation plan this time around. We have, as I mentioned, an equity environmental justice focus. We're looking at additional hazards, so changes in groundwater is a new hazard for the city, and invasive species. And then again, we're also looking at human caused and technological hazards as well. So why should New Bedford plan for hazards? So in order for the city to be eligible to apply for federal funding, they have to have a hazard mitigation plan in place that's accepted by FEMA and adopted by the city. So after we have this meeting, we end our public comment period, we'll send this plan to MEMA, we'll send it to FEMA, it'll come back to the city, and then the city has to vote to adopt the plan, to keep it in place. There's multiple definitions. These phrases are used throughout the plan, and you'll see, and the definitions are in the plan as well. Hazard mitigation, natural hazard, human-caused hazards, and technological hazards. So federal and state guidance, as I mentioned, so federal guidance, there's this local mitigation planning policy guide that just became effective in April of 2023. So this is the document that we use to guide the development of this plan update. We also use the 2022 Massachusetts Climate Change Assessment, volumes 1 through 3, to also update this hazard mitigation plan. So the city's hazard mitigation plan has to be consistent with the state's hazard mitigation plan, is essentially what that means. We started our core team meetings in January of 2023, so just about 2 years ago is when we started working on this. We have a project webpage on the city's dashboard available there. And the majority of our information was also translated into Spanish and Portuguese to align ourselves with that equity focus and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to understand what we're doing and what the plan actually represents. So we had a number of local hazard mitigation committee meetings. The local hazard mitigation committee is the group of folks who are responsible for the day-to-day stuff. We had 5 meetings with that group. Technically 4. We had meeting number 4 was 2 different parts. We had a technical committee meeting, and then we had a public workshop 1 year ago in April, and then we're here today for our second one. So we also had ward-specific meetings. So in order for us to be able to facilitate an equity or a diversity and equity and inclusion lens, we had to make sure that we were going where people are. So we held 6 ward meetings in neighborhoods. We also had listening posts that were set up on the top. This is one of the ward meetings here that Michelle Paul hosted. And this is one of our listening post examples. So we put these in all of the libraries in the city and asked folks just to take a couple of minutes to give us information. So this is part of our information collection process. We also did a number of municipal interviews, so people who are not represented on our local hazard mitigation committee but are still considered stakeholders in the community, we went out and met with them as well. We had an online survey, again, that was also translated into Spanish and Portuguese. We had just over 200 responses. Some of the highlights from that is that most respondents have experienced winter communicable disease-related and wind-related hazards. About 1/3 of respondents feel their household and/or business is adequately to very well prepared for a natural, human cause or technological hazard. More than half of respondents have been impacted by climate-related hazards such as higher heating costs, higher cooling costs, and power outages. The majority of respondents receive useful information via local news, social media, personal experiences, and then the emergency management department. We really wanted to better understand how people get their information. Overwhelmingly, 75% of people who took our survey don't know where their nearest emergency shelter is, which is problematic. So hopefully the plan has that information in it, and hopefully residents will be reading the plan and they'll get that information so they'll know where to go in the event of an emergency. And then over half respondents feel they're prepared to go at least 3 days without power in their home or in the case of an emergency. So the first part of the hazard mitigation process is to assess risks. So I know that this is difficult to see, but if you look at the plan online, you'll be able to see it up close. This is our hazard index, and we have all the different hazards that we looked at: flood-related, winter-related, wind-related, and so on the left-hand side. We looked at the frequency, so the number of times that these events have happened since 2016. We look at the location, so we look to see, is it one specific neighborhood? Is it the entire community? Is it the entire state that's impacted? And then we also looked at the severity, so what are the impacts from it? Was it a mild or minor storm, or was it a severe, significant storm? We came up with the hazard ranking here on the far right. We also included the 2016 ranking so that you can see where today's scores measure up against the 2016 plan. So you can see some of them are consistent, some of them are less, some of them are more. If it has an NA next to it in 2016, it means that the city did not profile that hazard in 2016. This is the human cause and technological hazard index. This one's a little bit different. It's similar in nature. It's got the hazards on the side, so technological hazards, infrastructure failure, communications, information technology, water, wastewater systems, human cause hazards, so cyber incidents, which the city had a cyber incident in 2018, which is fairly significant, urban fire, terrorism, and then human cause or other, so hazardous materials, accident, or spill. Again, we looked at the frequency, we looked at the location, and then the impact. The difference here for these two is that impacts is separated out into 5 different categories. So it's not just the impact, but it's the impact to populations, to the municipal government, to the built environment, to natural resources, and then to the economy. So again, the 2009 scores from the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan are shown here. This is the updated hazard index. We wanted to make sure that you could compare the two to see the changes in those numbers. Assessing risks and the risk vulnerability assessment. So we also looked at assets. So we looked at economic assets. We looked at businesses and who are the major employers because they represent vulnerable populations. There's a density of people who are at those facilities on a daily basis who need to be informed when there is an event. We looked at historic assets, development trends. We also looked at social assets. So we looked at vulnerable populations. Vulnerable populations could be elderly people living independent in the community, disabled individuals living independent in the community, could be school populations, so students, could be sober living houses, it could be congregate care or rehabilitation centers. We also looked at environmental justice areas, so that's that diversity, equity, and inclusion component, and cultural locations. We looked at natural resources, lifeline and utility systems, wetlands, conservation, recreation sites. And then we also looked at essential buildings and critical facilities. So, example, this Andrea McCoy Recreation Center is identified as a critical facility. It's a city-owned site. It's also a vulnerable population because people come here and congregate here. So there's a density of people already here, so we need to make sure that the city knows that. We looked at hazardous facilities. We looked at the transportation network, so roadways and bridges. And then we also conducted a number of GIS mapping and overlay analyses, which I'll get to in a minute. You'll be able to see those maps. So here we are. The first map in the map series is environmental justice areas. So, and these are all in the plan as well. These are all in Appendix A in the plan that's available online. Here's the legend. So anything in yellow is minority. Anything in green is minority in income. and anything in blue is minority income and English isolation. So this is where the socially vulnerable, typically disadvantaged populations are concentrated in the city. So that was the first map that we had to do. The next map was flood risks. So this is actually a capture of the entire city. So we had to break that out into 3 different components because all of these represent critical facilities or vulnerable populations. And in the plan, you'll see that the numbers that are associated with these points, there's a table with the map that tells you what that facility is. And we utilized these types of hazard scenarios to overlay with the different types of hazards, so flood-related hazards, hurricanes, sea level rise, things like that, so that we could identify what's vulnerable and when they're going to be vulnerable at. So right now, when we did our overlay analysis, the 100-year floodplain, which is this light blue color here, which is shown here, anything in the light blue, that's the 100-year. There's just about 1,100 parcels valued at over $500 million. The 500-year FEMA flood zone, which is the orange color here, has 69 parcels and just over $13 million that's in economic value that's vulnerable. And then there's the VE zone, or the velocity zone, which is this area right here, right up against the coastal area. There's 248 parcels that are vulnerable at just over $234 million of economic value. Right now, the city of New Bedford has 256 flood insurance policies maintained through the National Flood Insurance Program. And those 256 policies provide over $85 million in coverage value for residents who do have them. So you are required, if you have a federally backed mortgage in the city of New Bedford and you live in a FEMA flood zone, FEMA 100-year flood zone, you are required to carry flood insurance. So that's why this is important. So we also looked at the Massachusetts Coast Flood Risk Model. So the Woods Hole Group, which is another engineering firm, they just did all the mapping for the state of Massachusetts. And this just shows, this down here is the legend. So this is the 2030 projection in yellow, 2050 in orange, and 2070 in red. So this essentially shows what is going to be impacted and when, based on projections for sea level rise. We also looked at critical facilities, as I mentioned. So all of these points here have numbers associated with them. You can't really see at this scale. But again, there are tables included in Appendix A that tell you what these individual facilities are. We also looked at vulnerable populations. Again, like as I mentioned, there's commercial daycares, congregate care housing, apartment buildings. A lot of people have in-home daycare businesses in their homes, markets and food supply, and then schools. The average annual snow for the city, so the entire city is in one zone. It's Zone F, and it's typically on an average, the city receives 36 inches to 48 inches annually. So the entire city is in one zone. Some communities, they're split in 2 different zones. The sea lake and overland surge from hurricanes, which is also called the slosh hazard scenario. So this is just based on hurricanes. So there's hurricane categories 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here's the legend on the map. So category 1's yellow, 2 is orange, 3 is red, 4 is blue. And that represents all the different parcels that intersect with those different categories. So we've got category 1, there's just over 118 parcels that intersect. That's the economic value that is at risk. Category 2, 186 parcels. Category 3, 164 parcels. And category 4, another 164 parcels. Tornado incident, so you can't really see this, but there are a couple of points here. There's one here, there's one here in Acushnet, and then there were 2 that happened in New Bedford. So these 2 right here, you can see back in 1972 and 1970. So we're required to map this, but based on this information, the city of New Bedford, tornadoes is not a significant hazard for the city of New Bedford. We also had to look at earthquakes, again, dating back to 1989 in New Bedford. The most recent is, the most recent 2 are in Acushnet, 2014 and 2017. And you can see the different points are shown here on the map in the different areas. So there were a couple in New Bedford, there were 3 in New Bedford. And then the others are adjacent communities. Again, earthquakes are not a significant hazard for the city of New Bedford. The wildland-urban interface, so this is where vegetation intermixes with the built environment. So there's the interface and the intermix. Again, we've got all those facilities. This lower half, there aren't any areas right now. There are areas further north in the city. I just chose the wrong snippet to use for the presentation. So this next one is the annual coast flood exceedance probability for 2030. So this is a projection for 2030. These are the percentages. So this is the annual percentage probability that an event will happen that would cause impacts to the city. The higher percentage you go, the darker the gradient. So you can see these darker areas, these are the ones that are going to be impacted the most. Again, the majority of, with the presence of the Army Corps of Engineers hurricane barrier system, the city of New Bedford is afforded a certain level of protection based on that hurricane barrier. But if you look, the majority of the sites that are impacted here are outside, the barriers right up there. These are all outside of the barrier, so that's why they're showing as being vulnerable. And then this is a similar map, but this one actually, the annual 1% annual coast flood exceedance probability for 2030. This looks at the actual flood depth. So starting with the smallest, or the half a foot, is in the pinkish color, and then over 10 feet, again, is in the dark gradient. And you can see, again, the majority of the sites that are impacted over 10 feet are those that are outside of the hurricane barrier system. Those are the ones that are most at risk. Second step in the mitigation process is to establish goals. So the city of New Bedford developed this mission statement. Our mission is to proactively identify, assess, and mitigate all risks from natural, human caused, and technological hazards, including those intensified by climate change, and to safeguard the lives, property, and natural resources in the city of New Bedford. We strive to enhance community safety, resilience, equitably through collaborative planning, ensuring operational continuity, increasing public preparedness for disasters, managing resources effectively, and protecting and restoring natural assets, promoting sustainable economy that addresses both current and future challenges. I get that that's a mouthful, but this is the mission statement is what the city is using to implement this hazard mitigation plan. Several goals that were identified: prevent and reduce loss of life, property, infrastructure, and cultural resources, integrating hazard mitigation planning into relevant municipal departments, boards, commissions, and planning initiatives. So we want to make sure that hazard mitigation planning gets streamlined and gets woven throughout all of the city's plan studies and reports. Collaborate with state and regional federal agencies, and then ensuring future development is compliant with federal, state, and local regulations, making sure that as the city continues to either redevelop or develop, that the city is focusing that development or redevelopment outside of these hazard areas. The next step in the mitigation process is to identify projects and actions. So all of those maps that I just spoke to, what we do with those maps is we develop or identify hazard mitigation actions. So those maps tell us what's going to be impacted by what and when. We develop mitigation actions to offset those vulnerabilities. And that's when you guys came downstairs today, we have all the mitigation actions that are incorporated into this plan update on display there. So all of those actions that are outside in the other space, those are the actions that the city hopes to implement over the next 5 years. So identifying projects and actions, we typically think of 6 different categories: planning and prevention, property protection, natural resource protection, structural projects, emergency services, and public education and awareness. These mitigation actions come from a variety of different things. So the first is we take a look at the 2016 plan, and anything that wasn't accomplished from the 2016 plan that still remains relevant, we carry those forward into this update. We also did a capability assessment, so we looked at all of the city's plan studies and reports that were completed since 2016 and brought those mitigation actions over as well. And then the series of overlay analyses that we conducted that I just showed you, those maps, and then the local hazard mitigation committee. Also, we get that information from people like you who come to these events and take a look at what we have out there. If there's something that's missing or something that's incorrect, we want to know so that we can update that plan one more time before it leaves the city and goes to MEMA. So each action has a standardized bulleted list. So we look at the social, technical, administrative, political, legal, economic, and environmental. We're required to do this so that we can, it's called an abbreviated cost-benefit analysis. So each of those mitigation actions that are outside in the other room, we had to look at the costs and the benefits to make sure that they were realistic, that the city could achieve accomplishing those. The last step in the process is updating and maintaining the plan. So that's based on the city's capability, whether or not they have the personnel or staff to pull it off. Plan adoption, so once the plan comes back from FEMA, the city will have 1 year to formally adopt the plan and put it into place and keep it in compliance. Incorporating into other municipal documents, so as other plan studies and reports get updated, just like we did, we took their actions, brought it into this plan. As those plans get updated, there's going to be an expectation that they'll take these actions and bring them into their plan as well. So for instance, the city right now is updating their master plan and they're navigating to a comprehensive plan instead of a master plan. We took their draft mitigation actions and brought them into our plan, and as they work to continue that update, they're a little bit further behind us. As they update that plan, they will be taking the mitigation actions from this plan, bringing it into their plan. The more that the city of New Bedford can show FEMA that these mitigation actions have been vetted across multiple reports and studies, multiple demographics, the higher or the stronger their argument is when they do try to get federal funding. So these are just the mitigation strategies. This is everything that's out there. So I'm not going to read everything, but you'll see that. So the actions that are outside on the boards as well, what we've done is we, instead of having them by like categories or types, we put them by department. And we did that because the plan that we're updating, the 2016 plan, has it laid out that way too. So we want to make sure that the plan is easy to read and is maintained as a living document, and it just doesn't get done and sit on a shelf for 5 years. So we have the Local Hazard Mitigation Committee scored priority actions. This is the actual action here with the number. This is from the mayor. These are both from the mayor's office. Based on the scoring that we did, it either became a high priority action or a medium priority action. And then the red font identifies where the action comes from, because we wanted to make sure that people knew we weren't just making this stuff up, that this shows up somewhere in another plan or another report or based on another municipal department. The 2025 MHMP is our hazard mitigation plan update process that we're currently in. So there's additional actions. So planning department, again, developing cultural resource data universe, associated guidelines and protocols for coordinated disaster management. So again, these are the actions that the planning department has included in their draft comprehensive plan update. So this is that crossover that I was speaking to earlier. We took their actions, brought it into our plan. They're going to take our actions, bring it into their plan, so that there's that cross consistency and making sure that it's a comprehensive approach towards hazard mitigation planning. So again, there are a number. So you'll see the New Bedford Open Space and Recreation Plan from 2021-2028. Some of these actions come from there because they're applicable to natural, human caused, or technological hazards. Another mitigation action for planning department, engage vulnerable communities and environmental justice populations to preserve and restore open spaces and natural habitats from climate impacts. Again, that one came from their 2025 comprehensive plan update, which has not been completed yet, but is in process. So the regional airport, we did an interview with the regional airport to get this information. They have a couple of medium priority actions, developing a standard operating procedure for snow removal, and then also working at a new signalized intersection at Route 140 and Mount Pleasant Street to provide additional access to the airport. We also met with Eversource as part of our municipal interviews process. This one comes directly from them. They want to facilitate transparency of information and operations in advance of sustained power outages. So when your power goes out, they want to make sure that they are being transparent about timing, when your power is going to get restored, what the delays are, and why that happened. The health department weighed in as well. So this really stems from the COVID-19 pandemic. Advocate for public health initiatives and resources to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all residents. So all of these sub-actions below this are really all precautionary to make sure that, right now we're not in the middle of a pandemic anymore, and COVID-19 is still around, but not as significant as it was. The city wants to make sure that they still have the capacity to respond to a pandemic should one happen. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about FEMA, and the new administration has practically eliminated FEMA, or have you adjusted what FEMA can do to the plans that you have for New Bedford?
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I don't have anything concrete to respond to you with that, because we don't have any information yet, but the federal government, so FEMA headquarters, are in the process of updating the federal guidance to develop a hazard mitigation plan. And once that comes out, the federal guidance is being revised based on the president's executive orders. So once that happens, I'll be able to respond to your question better. But right now, I don't have any information. They're not releasing anything yet until the guidance is updated.
Something happens tomorrow?
If something happens tomorrow, our plan is not in place yet. Our plan is in draft form. Our plan still has to go to MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, for their review and approval, and then it goes to FEMA, Region 1, for their review and approval. So once that happens, they'll send a letter to the city saying the plan has been approved pending adoption, and from that date on, the city has 1 year to formally adopt the plan. That will get the plan in compliance. So I don't know what's going to be available for future funding. I don't know what types of projects the federal government is going to accept for a funding application, because that hasn't been determined yet.
The city adjusts to that?
Correct.
No funding, whatever?
Correct. So
FEMA doesn't show up on time, we got...
So the city has their operating budget, so they're planning to make some of these improvements on their own. But then there are other projects that have significantly bigger price tags that they're hoping, once the plan is adopted and in place, they can apply for federal funding, and it's a 75%, 25% cost share. So federal government would provide 75%, the city would have to come up with 25%. So if the mitigation action is not in the hazard mitigation plan, the city cannot apply for funding. So we made sure that everything that the city would like to do that's problematic or vulnerable today or into the near future is included in this plan. And I know that doesn't answer your question, but that's all I can tell you at this point, because I don't know either. So emergency management department, again, I mentioned that the hazard mitigation, all the critical facilities and vulnerable populations were significantly updated this time around. The city wants to make sure that that gets updated on a continual basis. It was a significant effort to try to update the critical facilities and vulnerable populations data set. So the city wants to take advantage of it being updated today and then just making minor adjustments moving forward. Again, emergency management. So we also updated the city of New Bedford's comprehensive emergency management plan as well. Our task was to develop just a basic emergency management plan. This mitigation action looks to expand that emergency management plan with functional annexes and hazard-specific annexes as well. Identify, consolidate, digitize vital records and maintenance storage, enhancing emergency response. So this is looking at identifying cooling stations, increasing communications, and enhancing evacuation and sheltering plans. Upgrades to this facility to become a full-blown American Red Cross approved shelter. Right now it's not. Also, regionalization with the town of Dartmouth and the refuse district to develop a debris management plan in advance of a hazard happening. Right now, there's there's a planning horizon for the refuse district as far as what they can take in and before they reach capacity. So that debris management plan is going to be looking at streamlining the process so that the city of New Bedford and Dartmouth have more available years moving forward. Police department, ensuring redundancy of critical infrastructure, community facilities and utilities. Fire department, the city just rolled out a special needs registry. This really looks at just helping roll that out so that everybody understands that there is a sign up for that and it is a resource to the community members. Port Authority, so a lot of these actions come from the 2016 plan or from the Harbor Port Assessment. They address things such as dredging New Bedford Harbor. It's really the completion of that project, replacing mooring anchors and gear, ensuring implementation of resilience recommendations at the port. So these mitigation actions are identified and developed so that the city can continue to maintain operations as is. New Bedford Port Authority, again, repair, bolster, expand commercial fishing piers. Some examples, installation of a storm mooring system north of Pope's Island. That's going to provide some additional protection during storm events, creating more berths at Pope's Island Marina. And again, these are all the same actions that are outside on the boards that you can stop by and provide feedback on. Department of Public Infrastructure probably has the most mitigation actions. It doesn't necessarily put stress level on specific individual departments. A mitigation plan does not hold the city responsible for accomplishing any of it. You really need to look at it as sort of like a giant wish list. If there is an event and there is funding available, if it's in your plan, the city can apply for funding to implement that action and remove that vulnerability and make the city more resilient. So you have to think of it that way. Some of them are focused on the dams, Buttonwood Park Pond Dam, New Bedford Reservoir Dam, Turner's Pond Dam, High Hill Reservoir Dam, and again, for the dams, there's a document called the Phase 1 Inspection Report. That Phase 1 Inspection Report identifies all of the short, medium, and long-term actions that have to happen that will be considered improvements to the dam so that the dam doesn't fail. So a lot of these actions are focused on making sure that the city of New Bedford completes those mitigation actions, those recommended improvements, so that the dam is maintained in good working order. Again, implementing preferred alternatives for the hurricane barrier structure. So the city of New Bedford has the benefit of having the hurricane barrier system that provides a significant amount of flooding protection to the city of New Bedford. But just making sure that there are people who are checking in on that and making sure that that remains in good working order. Completing improvements to the high service area, so that's water distribution system, making sure that there's enough flow going through the pipes, making sure that the water mains over bridges are secure. Safeguarding public drinking water supplies. Technology infrastructure upgrades to build resiliency and data protection, cybersecurity, and monitoring of existing systems. So I mentioned previously that the city did have a cyber breach in 2018 that was pretty significant. So the city is just making sure that they're staying ahead of the curve and they have plans in place and protocols in place so that there isn't another security breach. Completing seawall, pier, and beach stabilization improvements. So as part of our process over the last 2 years, there have been impacts, coastal erosion and damage that have happened to these specific structures. So it's based on making those improvements so that the city is more resilient into the future. So there's a lot of actions that say like implement the preferred alternative identified for each CSO group, which is a combined sewer overflow. So this is stormwater, but then there's this caveat statement. So each CSO group, and there's a ton in the city, has a specific action associated with it that it's not listed here. It would be exhaustive to actually look at that and to put that all up in print. So if there has a statement like this that's in italics, you can go to the long-term CSO control and integrated capital improvement plan that's located in the plan that's available on the city's website, and you can get that specific information for each specific CSO group. And again, same situation, implement the preferred alternative for each stormwater collection system. So there's probably 7 or 8 specific sites that identifies and lists the improvements that are going to happen there. And another one, a preferred alternative identified for each wet weather flooding project. It's the same situation. There are multiple actions underneath that specific one. Resolving flooding, a new SCADA system for pump stations so that they can operate remotely. Promoting and enhancing public outreach and engagement through social media, citywide 311 system. So this is just updating information and communications to the community. So this looks at the quality and appeal of New Bedford streetscapes by building and maintaining a resilient and healthy urban forest. So this has things such as establishing a street tree endowment. So that would be a specific fund that developers would put money to that could be tapped by the city to identify some planting plans. Consider becoming a Tree City USA, promoting adopted tree program. So it's all about making sure that the city has enough trees, because the benefit of trees in the city is immeasurable. So this actually, those all sub-actions speak to that main priority action. Developing vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle mobility in the city while striking a balance between safety improvements, gateway treatments. So this just looks at ADA ramp improvements, complete street improvements. So modifying the existing transportation network so that it's oriented not just towards vehicles, but pedestrians and bicyclists. This last one looks at the resiliency of pump stations and make sure that they are flood-proofed and in good working order into the future. Inspecting, implement recommendations for repair, replacement, and reinforcement associated with the main transmission system. So again, looking at the main network, making sure that the recommendations are for the reliability and resiliency of the transmission main network. Education and communication about climate change and sustainability. This comes from the Resilience and Environmental Stewardship Department. This is to make sure that not only is the city working to improve the city's resilience, long-term resilience moving forward, but that they're educating the community as they move along as well. The more that the community understands what the city is doing, the more buy-in that happens, and then the more attention gets to those. Environmental stewardship is also interested in protecting natural resources and creating new greenways. Also looking at maintaining invasive species management plan within the city. An efficiency campaign and tracking system, community rating system. So the city does not currently participate in the NFIP community rating system, but they are interested and are pursuing becoming enrolled in the community rating system. And what that does is the NFIP is the National Flood Insurance Program. They sponsor this community rating system program. So if the city becomes enrolled in the CRS, which is free to do, it's just a paper trail and it's time consuming. If you have a flood insurance policy in the city and the city is a member of the CRS program, anybody who carries a flood insurance policy can get an annual discount on their flood insurance policy, because the city has gone a step above and beyond by becoming enrolled in the CRS. So there are benefits to the CRS system that can be reaped by the general public. Department of Facilities and Fleet Management. So this is just maintaining high quality buildings and services and infrastructure before, during, and after hazards. Replacing and renovating existing fire stations. Most of them were built in the 1950s and they're considered antiquated and dated based on their vulnerability. So the city is just looking to replace and renovate so that they are all brought up to current standards. Again, SOPs for active management of brush surrounding recycling center, a new roof for the former police station, feasibility studies for a potential separation and ultimate relocation of the following. So the city has the fire garage where they maintain their 13 all-electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. There is a risk of fire happening if they're not sectioned off. Right now the city uses concrete blocks to create separate bays to maintain that distance. So if one battery for an electric vehicle does catch on fire, it's not going to jump over to the next one and just have total decimation. And then finally, the Information Technology Department, effectuating communications upgrades across municipal departments. So they want to make sure that all municipal departments are on the same page and are communicating with each other moving forward. So next steps, we're at the end. Public comment ends on April 18th, so we're in the middle of our public comment period right now. If you go online or you see the actions here, you can get my information. You can provide feedback to me directly. Everything that comes into me during this public comment period, I will bring back to the local hazard mitigation committee, and they will determine what gets woven into the plan update. So we hope to have a draft plan to the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency by May 5th. They have a 2-month window to review and approve that. Then it goes to FEMA. They also have a 2-month window to review and approve that. And as I mentioned, once FEMA approves the plan pending adoption, the city will get a letter stating such, and then the city has 1 year from that date to formally adopt the plan, and then the plan will be in compliance. So once we get that letter from FEMA Region 1, we'll do a presentation to the City Council. We'll ask them to support the plan's adoption by signing a resolution. We'll send that letter back to FEMA and MEMA, and then the plan is in place and is considered compliant and active for the next 5 years. After 5 years, the city will have to update their plan again. So a hazard mitigation plan has a planning horizon of 5 years. Michelle Paul, Brian Nobrega, and myself, these folks have been the primary points of contact for me. Their information is also on the project webpage as well if you want to reach out to those folks. And I just wanted to say a special thank you to those folks. So the Resilience and Environmental Stewardship Department, the Department of Public Infrastructure, and the Emergency Management Department. Those 3 individuals were my primary points of contact over this 2-year period. I can't even begin to tell you like how many phone calls, emails, meetings we had to have in order to get to this point today. But the city, I do want to mention the city's dedication to getting this plan done and getting it done properly and making sure it's a comprehensive plan has really been impressive considering all the other communities that I work with. It's a large community. There's a lot at risk here, and these folks have been great to work with, and without them, we would not be here today at this point with a draft plan ready to go to MEMA and FEMA. That's the end of my show. Any questions? Thank you. I appreciate that. No questions at all? All right then. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. And like I mentioned, the plan is available on the city's website. It's if you just Google hazard mitigation plan, it'll come right up. The plan is available. If you look at the plan online, it's 700 pages and it's a little daunting. But the actual plan itself, the part that you want to read, is the first half. The second half are all appendices that we're required, like today's event, I have to provide in the appendices the sign-in sheet, this presentation, any feedback that you all are giving to us. MEMA and FEMA want to know all the details about what our process has been for the last 2 years. So that's why there's 350 pages of supporting documentation. So you don't really have to worry too much about the second half. The first half of the plan report and Appendix A has the mapping. I would suggest you focus on that if you're interested in reading it. Otherwise, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.